Hello, chess friends. Mike Koplitz from the Royal Rooks, York, Pennsylvania, USA, bringing you another chess lesson. And in this lesson, we're going to take a look at black having the superior center. Anyway, I did a video earlier about white having the strong center and how white can do some really big damage when white does have the center. Now we're going to take a look at, well, what happens when black has that superior center. As always, I like to use examples from books and then add extra to it. This is the one I'm using. And this is page, well, let's see, they have a page number here, 105. Okay. This is a game between, this was International Master, Manoch, and I'm probably not saying his name properly, and I apologize to him if I'm not, and Grandmaster Mednes. Bear in mind, this was 1993, so the International Master, he might be a Grandmaster by now. Just got to get a wire out of the way. We're going to start the game with C4. Nice ready type opening. F6. G3. E6. Knight F3. D5. This is all theory. You can look all this stuff up. And then C5. Okay. The interesting thing that when I look at the ready system, and I do start my games generally with knight to F3, is in this case, black ends up with a much superior center right off the bat. And that's part of these types of openings. So we'll just keep watching to see what transpires and what black does with his superior center. Bishop G2, got to finish the fianchetto. C6. Castle. Bishop E7. E3. Now, I stop here for a minute because it looks pretty obvious that white wants to do D4. And why wouldn't he? That would pretty much balance out the center and might even give some advantage to white. There's a note in the book here that bishop to B2 is a good move. And our analysis has stopped. So we have to figure out why our analysis just stopped. And we lost our analysis. So I have to click the start. Okay. Forgot to click the start. My apologies, folks. All right, here we go. Bishop to B2. And so let me pull back E3. See if the computer likes B2. Now, the computer likes a quick D4, but in the book, the author gives B2 as a pretty good move. I don't think the computer likes it, so I'm just going to take that back. Unfortunately, I have to use a wired mouse right now because my regular mouse, which is a Bluetooth, decided it didn't want to work any longer. It needed a charge. Black decides to do D4. Oh, wait a second. E3, D4. There we go. Very interesting. I think it's a very interesting move. And the center is going to start falling apart quickly, or I should say the battle for the center. Maybe not falling apart, but let's see what happens. And we have a very interesting center here. So let's try it again. There we go. When you're looking at this, you can see right off the bat that pawn sitting on D4, the black pawn on D4, is going to be a big problem for black. His diagonal from A1 to A8, where this nice little bishop here, this little one's going to go to, it's kind of blocked up. I see E5 potentially coming. And black's got a really good center. I mean, white has pretty much nothing in the center at this point, which does make it interesting. So black decides, well, is it black to move? No, it's white to move at this point. White moves rook E1. Well, sure, he's got to get some power into the center and develop the rook. And black does knight to D7, and that actually has an exclamation point with it. No, let me take that back. I'm wrong. I'm in the wrong section. He castles. That's what I thought he would want to do at this point. Got to get castled here. Get your king out of the center. That's kind of important. And then D3. So white stops the advance of the black pawn to D3, which really would have been interesting. Knight to D7. Again, knight to D7. Yeah, I like it how sometimes it just doesn't want to do the move you've done, which usually means I've knocked a piece off the board somewhere. Knight to D7. That's exactly what the computer's calling for, except the DGT board does not wish to respond. And when that does occur, as it has every so often, I have to do this and go back to white. There we go. That happens once in a while. It's a pretty painful thing when it happens, but we fix it nice and quick. Okay, so it's white now to move, knight to D7. That has an exclamation point from the author, but no explanation as to why he thinks that's a terrific move. Bishop to A3, just like the computer said. Of course, that makes perfect sense. You got to do something about that pretty weak black bishop. I'm sorry, black squared bishop, or dark squared bishop, I should say. A5, bishop takes, and A5 doesn't want to respond. A5. And the board is not working again. I may have to start using the mouse and just move the pieces manually if this is going to start happening. I like having the DGT board, and for those of you who have seen more of these videos, it usually behaves a little better than this. And it is not behaving right now. Okay. So when it decides not to behave, I start moving things manually. A5. Bishop takes E7. A5. Bishop takes E7. Queen takes E. Well, of course. Okay, I'm not sure why it just did that. I'm having an interesting time here, aren't I? D7. Kind of likes reverting, doesn't it? All right, we'll give him one more shot here. And then bishop takes E7. It's making me wonder why it keeps going backwards. Why does it keep going backwards? See, it's going backwards. All right, we're having a problem here. Hang with me just for a second, guys. Black to move. We'll go back to the DGT board and see what it's going to do. And okay, it started responding again. Bishop take bishop. On E7, queen take bishop. Queen take bishop. And then he does A3. A3. Maybe to prevent this knight from moving in to B4. Well, that could be. Knight goes to C5. The center is pretty much black controlled. I'm sure you could see that by just looking at the board. All right, let's start with white's move, rook to A2. And then black played F6. F6. Rook to B2. I'm assuming that he's going to try to push this pawn on B3 forward. Rook to D8. Bishop. I'm sorry. Rook B to E2. So I guess he's now attacking this E6 pawn. But that isn't going to matter because you just push it forward. Now notice, again, black has a superior, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful center. Rook to F1. I don't think white knows what he can do at this point to make things better. But black finishes off his development with bishop to G4. H3, got to chase him away. We don't like that pin, so he just goes backwards. Now he's going to go to G4 because he really doesn't like that pin. And this bishop then is going to go to G6, putting pressure on the D3 pawn. Knight to E1. Queen goes to D6, just like the computer said. Then white goes bishop to D5 check. Notice it's saying he should do H4. That's what the computer says. As you can see on the analysis that black has a pawn and a half advantage of 1.5, 1.6. He has a definite advantage here at this point. I don't know what white thinks he's doing here. His rooks are out of place. His one knight can't really develop anywhere. He does have a nice bishop on D5, but that's about it. Knight to E7. We're going to take care of that. B4. A takes B4. A takes B4. Knight to D7. Bishop takes the free pawn, or at least it looks like a free pawn on B7, doesn't it? Rook on A. Of course, it is not a free pawn, because here's how. The bishop has to retreat. And now the queen comes down. So look at the strong center. Here's where I want to stop for a second. Look at the strong center. Black has a pawn on E5, on E4. Pretty much controls the D5 square. Yeah, white's got a bishop in the center of the board. That's easy to take out. Bishop takes bishop here, and all of a sudden, black's got a beautiful pass pawn. Now that the center was secured, he switched over to the queenside attack. That was the best place for him to go. Bishop takes G6. Knight takes G6. Knight to G2. I think the bishop on E4 was white's best piece, and he traded it. I'm not sure why. Again, knight C5 attacks the D3 pawn. It now has to be protected. H4. Queen comes to B3. Now, there is a passed pawn sitting here on C4. We don't want to forget about that. We'll have to see what happens. Rook moves to D2. Queens come off the board. And down comes the rook. H5. Knight to F8. So D3 is a weakness. Look at the knight on B1. She cannot go anywhere. And I just let her go somewhere, so let me back her up. There's a lot of weaknesses here in the black position because in the white position of the weaknesses, because black has a beautiful, beautiful center. Look at that center. That pawn chain is just beautiful. So let's see what he's going to do about it. Rook to A2. Sure, got to get on the open rank. I'm sorry, I should say open file. You got to give this knight a place to go, even though that's a little bit of a problem. You can bring this knight over. Notice that white is defending. He's not attacking because of because he gave up the strong center to his opponent. He's going to get clobbered here in a little bit. Knight to A3. Has to. But this pawn here is going to drop. Nothing you can do about it. Knight to B5. And then knight C3. I'm sorry, C5. F4, a little attempt at breaking the pawn chain. That's okay. Black's happy. He's going to start moving this pawn forward. Rook to A7. Not that big a threat. Knight to D7. Of course, the knights are protecting each other. That's not a problem there. G5. E takes F4. G takes F6. Let's see. Knight takes F6. Knight takes F4. A lot of exchanges. We're going to go into an endgame here pretty darn quickly. Knight on F to E4. Now that's an interesting move that has an interesting exclamation point with it. Yeah, it makes sense when I stop here for a second and think about it. The D3 pawn is very well protected. The two knights are in the center. So you notice how the center got cleared out with those exchanges, but black just kind of walks right into the center and said, yeah, that's nice, but it's still mine. Rook comes to E7. I'm not sure what it's doing there. There's just nowhere for white really to move. He's on the defense, and he's just what we used to call rope-a-doping. If anyone remembers Muhammad Ali, D2, knight E6, rook E3. And you can see, look at the numbers here on the computer. All of a sudden, it's 7.5 in favor of black. Now, black does have to be a little careful, folks. Look at that rook on B8. You don't want to end up with a checkmate back here, a back rank checkmate by that rook. So, yeah, you have to be careful just a little bit. Now, knight to D8, he's threatening checkmate with this move forward. So he's going to take. Basically, white's lost. He's just moving pieces at this point, and he eventually gives up right about now. But you can see the problem here. He's going down. Mate and 8. It's just a matter of time now for these rooks to start moving and doing their thing. I mean, kings can go to H2, and then you're just going to come right down with the check. King's going to go to H3. You're going to check him again. H4. I'm just playing out the computer right now. H1 check. Notice the checkmate is still there. Rook to E8 checkmate still exists, but he's never going to get a chance to do it. Knight to F6 check. Rook takes H5 check. King to F4. G5 check. G4 check. I love these checks. And rook F3 mate. Gorgeous game. Again, holding on to the center is the key. When you have control of the center, you can then execute an attack on the left or the right. I should say the king or the queen side flanks. The center has to be secure. You have to control it. You have to see that your opponent can't rip into the center, because once you start a flank attack, the defense to a flank is through the center. I know logic says it should be on the other side. So if I'm doing a queen side attack, why don't you do a king side? It doesn't work that way in chess. Too many games have proven that. The best offense against a flank attack is a center attack. But if you already control the center like Black did, that queenside attack was a piece of cake for him. So I hope you learned something from this lesson. I did too. I love going over the games this way because I have to think about it and I get to use my computer at the same time. So God bless you. Take care. Happy chess from Mike Koplitz at the Royal Rooks, York, PA. Come see us at royalrooks.club, royalrooks.club, CLUB. Take care and bye.